Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. It's truly an honor for me to introduce this very special talk, which I had the great privilege of organizing this year. I would first like to thank the APAD Education Committee and its chair, Andra Russick, as well as APAD's Executive Director, Lydia Malamed Johnson, for their encouragement and enthusiasm for this program so that we may present it to you today. Also, this program and all of our talks programming will be available in about a month on our YouTube channel, so stay tuned for that. This talk is an exploration of the obscured self-portrait, whether by intervention, costuming, or camouflage. We are thrilled to have esteemed artists Gina Osterloh, Cecilia Paredes, and Pipo Nguyen-duy on our panel today, along with our fantastic moderator, Paulina Choh, the Marcia Brady Tucker Fellow in Photography at Yale University Art Gallery. All three artists are showing their work here at the fair. Gina Osterloh with Higher Pictures, Cecilia Paredes with Ruiz Healy Art, and Pipo Nguyen-duy with Clamp. And now I would like to hand it over to Paulina Choh to begin the conversation. Thank you.
Welcome to Convergence and Camouflage, Artists Obscuring the Self. First, I want to thank Lydia Johnson, Irene Papaefthemiou, and Michelle Stanek of APAD for organizing this panel, and the gallery Higher Pictures for the honor of inviting me to speak. I'm delighted to introduce these three incredible artists who have been collected and exhibited at institutions internationally and whose lives have similarly taken them around the world. Cecilia Paredes explores the theme of identity through photo performances in which she camouflages her body against beautifully patterned backdrops and disappears amongst the ornamentation. Born in Lima, Peru, a country whose early civilizations revered nature, Cecilia often disguises herself against flora. Animals, various objects, and fabric also play an important role. By presenting herself as part of the landscape, Cecilia raises the question of how our environment influences who we are. She first developed her career not in Peru, but in Costa Rica, where she lived for 25 years, and which she represented at the Venice Biennale in 2005. Here, her work can be seen with the gallery Ruiz Healy Art. Pipo Nguyen-duy was born in Vietnam and emigrated to the United States as a political refugee. Growing up within 30 kilometers of the demilitarized zone of the 18th parallel, he describes hearing gunfire every day of his early life. Today, Pipo is a professor of photography at Oberlin, but he has led many past lives. As a national athlete in table tennis, a Buddhist monk in northern India, as well as a bartender and nightclub manager in the East Village in the 80s. Even more characters appear in Pipo's artwork, as he uses traditional Asian theatrical and visual language to imitate and interpret the Western canon. His work has been recognized with a Guggenheim Fellowship in Photography and a National Endowment for the Arts. And you can find his pictures here with Clamp Gallery. Gina Osterloh is an associate professor of art at The Ohio State University and has also been recognized with awards such as the Nancy Graves Foundation for Visual Art and a Guggenheim Fellowship. Her work explores the relationship between vision, the perception of difference, and selfhood, pushing against the camera's readiness to identify its subjects and their surroundings. Gina creates sets and compositions where appearance and disappearance fill the same frame at the same time. Her work was featured on the cover of Aperture's 2023 issue, Being and Becoming Asian in America, and she's represented at APAD by the gallery Higher Pictures. Cecilia, Pipo, and Gina, you each use techniques of camouflage to address our relationship to environment and visual recognition. Now, throughout history, camouflage has been associated with survival strategies as a way to allow prey to hide and predators to hunt. This extends beyond the animal kingdom into events like World War I and World War II, where artists and designers joined military units called Camouflage to help disguise soldiers, buildings, and naval ships, using their experience from avant-garde art movements like Cubism that played with optical illusion. And within an immigration context, camouflage calls up issues like assimilation and identification. There's so many different ways in which camouflage functions. So I'd like to start by simply asking you, what does camouflage mean to you? When and why did you turn to it as a strategy?
Well, in my case, first of all, good afternoon, everybody. In my case, I started imitating animals out of love, basically. And I chose more marginal animals, and I started to imitate them, paint myself as them. But then, when I came to live in the United States, and I abandoned the exuberant nature in Costa Rica, I started to use wallpaper and fabric with lots of flowers, imitating nature. And that is when I started to camouflage myself in them. I think it was a way of concealment, like a quiet insertion of my person into this new territory, in this new geography that I was starting to adapt. And in my thinking, the first thing that you have to do is to be part of the landscape. And that's how I came out with the series, The Landscapes, when I insert myself in different domestic scenographies that are surrounded by these fake but exuberant flowers that are, first of all, a remembrance of what I left in Costa Rica, but also a name to create that paradise, you might say, in my new life. So I think that that's how I perceived it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, I think I'm just really grateful to have this camouflage as a way to think about the work, and in many ways it really contextualized what I have been trying to do for years. For me, the context in terms of camouflage is cultural assimilation. And I'm not speaking for my Vietnamese community or, Vietnamese community, Asian, Vietnamese, American community, but the way that I approach it is having to deal with this really strange stereotypes of being an Asian male. In one hand, you have to be the warrior, kind of Bruce Lee types, and on the other hand, you have to be this really submissive servant. And so I want to make that choice, and I think even at my earlier life, when I was younger, trying to change my name to John Hope Nander didn't really work out too well. But the idea of how much you can assimilate to a culture, is it superficial or is it something that is a thorough assimilation? And I think that's the way that I deal with camouflaging. And I think having been aware of your position in the new culture, one is to be completely invisible. The other way is to embrace your difference, because no matter what, it would be a superficial assimilation process. And I think later on, I just really embraced it. So if I was to choose to be the domestic, the submissive person, I'd rather embrace the Madonna or the Medusa, where the gaze are like extremely intense. So that's how I think my work is being contextualized in this particular topic.
Oh, wow. I mean, that theme, that experience, those pressures of assimilation, the impossibility of assimilation, and what is the shape to refuse assimilation probably really influenced some of my early works with camouflage. My first work with camouflage was quite literal. It was a series I was working on in 2005 in graduate school called Somewhere Tropical. thinking about notions of the tropics, stereotypes of the tropical body. But I realized quickly that putting on military camouflage pants is, in a way, an already known metaphor. And so then I transitioned to more of the underlying kind of function, operation of camouflage, to copy, to mimic, mimesis. And so I began to see camouflage as a way to also, to connect the body with the environment, where the body could share a visual code with the environment.
But I think in your work, just looking at your work, Gina, I mean, I feel like, to literally taking yourself, blending in with those really gestures, those tape, you just subvert that whole notion of being erased, and now it's an empowering kind of gesture, and I thought that was just really fantastic.
Oh.
You know what I mean? It's
Thank
like,
you,
how
yes.
do you take that?
Absolutely.
Which is a handicap, and then I think instead of just following through
Right.
and project your sort of like less position, somehow
It becomes empowering.
Yeah, it's really empowering. So like
Right.
those gestures, I just thought they are just so aggressive, but like in the right way. Yeah.
Thank you.
I really see such a balance of opposing, impulses in all of your works. You each present us with self-portraits where your body is very clearly foregrounded, but at the same time, there's this central element of self-effacement, right? Gina, the term anti-portrait has been used by scholar Ellen Tanney to refer to the way your work invites projection based on social convention instead of individual recognition. And I know, Pipo, that this is something you're thinking about in projects like Assimilation or Another Western. Recently, there's been a pushback against this notion of legibility, right? For instance, Thongmei Heberer critiques the commodification of diversity and what she calls expectations of readiness on demand. And I think in an age of ever-increasing surveillance, works like Hito Steyerl's How Not to Be Seen suggest that camouflage might be necessary on an everyday scale. At the same time, we can always make out your human form in these environments that you can create. In fact, Cecilia, you've mentioned that you leave your ears exposed as an anchor to reality. How do you understand the relationship between the personal and the social or general in your works?
Well, before getting into your question, I would like to say that despite the fact that we have just known each other, it is so absolutely marvelous, the fact that I can see that there is a common thread between the works. And in a way, we're talking in different styles, talking of the same subject, no? The subject that you are mentioning as camouflage, as a way to live our everyday, no? In reality, in my personal case, I always say that my work starts when I start hunting. And hunting meaning that I go to buy my fabric, for example. And sometimes it happens that when I see the fabric, because I buy normally already printed fabric, the fabric talks to me, and I go to my studio already almost nervous about what is going to happen. And in the case of the one that we are seeing, COVID was starting. And I thought when I saw this fabric that there was an aggression in the beaks of the birds, and it was not a gentle image, but more an aggressive image. So I went to my studio and I started researching about this particular bird that is a crane. And the first thing I discovered is that this is in the Japanese tradition, this is the bird that shoos away the plague. And I am in the middle of COVID. So I go like, I have to do something with this. So the pose that I use is the pose almost of a person who wants to fly. In each end of my hands, of my painted body, is one of the birds of the fabric. And everything makes sense in that moment, no? The fact that I am talking without being completely open about what is happening. So yes, I am using camouflage to express what was happening in that moment, no? It was a very powerful moment. Not always. You go to your studio and out of 10 tries, maybe one works, no?
Of course.
That's another thing. Yes.
And, and I just look at your work, and I really appreciate the idea of adjusting to your environment. I mean, I see the nature one, and now, I wouldn't say it's domestic. I'm just talking, there's like a different types of materials. And in that way, I can really relate, because I think the way that I work, I really considered site specificity. So if I'm here in America, it's great because, I know my position, I speak, but the most difficult part about camouflaging for me or trying to blend in is when I go to Vietnam, right? Because now our gestures are different. I can speak the language, my skin is lighter now. People don't look like this in Vietnam, and so how do you deal with that? And when I go to Amsterdam with my, I have partially like a little bit of a Dutch blood, so I would try to position myself like, okay, so how do you adapt to this environment? And I think I can say that's one of the reasons why I live in India for so long. I mean, for a few years when I was younger, it's just because in that place, you completely aware that you are outside of it. You don't need to really try hard to blend in. And so that's what I think about in terms of, it's like depending on where, as you're integrating back into your culture, how do you see yourself? How do you blend in? How do you make that fluid?
I speak Peruvian Spanish with an accent of Peru 100%. No, I live more years out of Peru than in Peru, but I have my accent completely. The moment I go to a vendor and I ask for apples, she goes like, "Where are you from?" Because she detects my foreignness, I guess. And when I am out of Peru, they always go like, "You're from Lima." Exactly. But yeah, you become other. It is true.
Yes,
It is true.
I mean, I feel like that's where we are in that kind of space,
Yes.
Wow, I mean, I resonate so much with what both of you are saying in terms of it's like a survival strategy. It is a means of movement. And thinking about also how in the photograph, camouflage creates repetition and in a way kind of destabilizes the picture plane. And it also allows us to inhabit multiple points at once. Cecilia, like with your work with the birds, I see your figure, but I see also like this energy in all of the birds. So it's like there's the body, but then you're setting up a situation where it's also out of body and extends into this greater field.
There is a sensation when you, and I am sure that it happens to you, when you make a portrait like the one that we're seeing, after it stays with you, no? The rest of the day lingers the sensation because it's like a big piece of theater after all. Performance is the closest thing of theater. So when you're involved, the character that you are interpreting stays with you. Not only one day, many days after. No? It's very powerful.
But I look at that work, well, I have to say, Gina, I'm like, oh my gosh. Why did I think of that? It's just so brilliant because it's just such a simple, yet so, such a powerful gesture,
Powerful.
And looking at, one of the things that I think it kind of resonate with me when I look at both of your work is, it's aesthetically, it's just like really sensually beautiful. But you embrace it in the way that you talk about, this topic that we're talking about in the way that is just like really beautiful and really empowering. And I think that's just, that's why I'm so engaged with the kind of work that you're doing. So I just want to say that.
I find striking that there's this visibility and invisibility, not only in the viewer's experience, but often your own, right, as you were performing these pieces. You each have these very elaborate sets and costumes, whether it's feathers or paint or tape or clothing that you wear, which tends to be, it seems, physically restrictive, reducing your ability to move or even more significantly to see, as in this image here. Could you share how this impacts your creative process? I mean, Cecilia, you've said that this really lingers with you across days, and maybe share some of these behind-the-scenes processes too?
Well, in my case, when I started performing the animals, that was 2000, 2001, 2002, there was no body painting. So I literally used paint for the walls 1 hour after in the shower, you know? But then it's a process of painting. All the body is painted, imitating the background, no? And that, I think, that is the process is so long, because if you can imagine painting the back of a person, it's like a 35 by 35 inches canvas. So we start 7:30 in the morning, and I am ready to be photographed by 3 p.m. No talking, no eating, no nothing, but going into the Zen kind of silence and no movement. That already takes you in a path of very special, you know, silence and self-reflection. Yeah, that's, for me, that's one of the main things. Yeah.
And I think, you know, looking at the work, the three of us, I mean, I feel like the photograph just kind of captured this performance, really, right? And in my case, I like what you say it about, you know, just going around and hunting for your sources. But it's the same that I would do is like, you know, how do I go into the shop and start making the shoes to look like Bruegel's shoes? Or, you know, when I go and take traditional, you know, Beijing opera, how do I mimic these? And then think about how to make the costume. I mean, everything seems to be so interconnected. You know, I remember, you know, with my ex-wife, she would always make fun of me because we would be going out in the public, and I would remember, she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just doing my gesture," you know? And it's a beautiful thing where that wall between real life and what you do in the studio, it's just kind of like becomes kind of thin. And what really is lovely for me is going to 7-Eleven at 2:30 in the morning in my full makeup, you know, and then have this confrontation and conversation with just normal folks. So that's like I think that's the story behind the shoot is almost just as interesting to me.
Absolutely.
You know, as like the shoot itself.
Yes.
Wow. So really bringing the studio into the real world.
Absolutely.
They're very
you know,
interconnected.
Yes, I think so. You know, I mean, I think the perfect example for it is when my kid was born. I'm just like, oh my God, that's a model right there, you know? So like, let's do something with this 3-month-old baby. Oh, I get it, let's do Madonna. You know, it's great, it's awesome. And then, you know, so.
The machine, the thinking machine never stops.
Yes, you know, it's awesome. When, you know, I think like the kind of things that keep us staying awake all night, but in a good way.
I'm not sure what to add.
You don't have to add anything. There's a lot to think about.
Yeah, taking it in.
I mean,
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, I feel like, you know, with your work, it's just like the jazz is so intense, right? To have all your body just taped up.
Yeah, I feel like, the camouflage going into masking, it's a vehicle to be completely present, right? The durational performance that leads to the final clicking of the shutter release cable, right? Because our work with masking and camouflage is a duration, and it's with and behind and in conjunction with the camera.
And taking it out. Taking it out is also an incredibly hard performance, no?
Right, decamouflaging.
Yes, exactly.
But you know, I mean, I feel like, but as the viewer, you just see that, right? It's like, it's already this already prepared image with like all of that process, heavily processed, that's involved. To me, I like how your photograph speaks about two things. Yes, they are incredibly subversive, but you know, what is being endured in terms of taping, these are almost violent kind of gesture that's just like built on your body, one after another. And I'm just kind of curious, what do you think about that gesture as having this potential double meaning, right?
Right.
You know?
I think of the act of touching skin, pressing into eyes, these sites in which we assign and project identities to refuse this automatic projection and creation of identity. I mean, I think of, I'm trying to slow that down, to really strip it down, slow it down. And in this work, you know, the final step was to, I guess this is not so related to camouflage, but I had to place the shutter release cable in my mouth. It's a 4x5 camera, and to take the picture, I had to bite down.
Wow.
So I think with camouflage and the making, I'm also asking a lot of questions. And so the main question here was, how could I transfer image making from sight to the orifice of speech? Like thinking of historical paintings and the ribbon of speech unfolding from the mouth, and also breath. Yeah, I think with camouflage, I also think of, you know, in both of your work, and I hold this very close, is camouflage is also a strategy to inhabit multiple viewpoints at once. It's like this simultaneous, again, we're like in the body, but then we're also like in all of these corners of the room, or in different spatial coordinates. And so I think of camouflage as a means of movement.
There's such a physical element to all of your practices that extend beyond, you know, the idea that vision is something that's immaterial, something that you can't touch. You know, and I see that even in the titles. Gina, yours, for instance, like pressing against looking, right? The French philosopher and sociologist Roger Caillois considers morphological mimicry to be a kind of three-dimensional photography on the level of the object, and I'm quoting from him. You all draw on these other traditions, whether it's painting or performance, theater, and so on. What does the medium of photography specifically allow you to do? How are you thinking about the relationship between surface and dimensionality in your works?
Well, in my case, you know, I am not a formal photographer, but I use photography to register my performance. As I am an artist of almost all trades. I do engraving and painting and sculpture. And when I arrived to a performance, the only way that I could register the act was through photography. Of course, as soon as you enter in the world of photography, you realize that there is a wealth there that is marvelous. One of the most important things is that photography is the one ruling when you make a photograph. I mean, it always brings you back. Something gives you something that you have not perceived that it was included.
That's right. You know,
it's incredible.
The three-dimensional kind of space can be really confusing sometimes. And I think what the photograph does is that it renders all of this information clearly, so you can come back and re-examine.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, I imagine some of these details we're not able to register when we're doing the work.
Exactly.
But then we have that bonus of later on to investigate
Exactly.
it, right?
Jean, may I, Paulina, ask you to put one of the photos that I want to concretely tell you about? One more. That one. That one. When I took that when we did that performance, if you get really into it, the line that is done with the two hands that are together continue in the rock. We never saw that one, but this is the photography giving you back.
Yes.
You know, and if you continue looking up on top of the back, the rock gets to be dark, and so the line continues in the line of the rock. Those precious things are given to you by photography. That's what I will never cease to be astonished by, really, yes. Wow. Yeah, it's always giving you some present.
And I think, you know, in terms of the camera and photography, for me, at least like during particular moment when I was doing this work, it was just there to witness, you know? I mean, that's like my private audience in a way. There's somebody who I can converse. There's someone that I think about what happened if I raised my left, how would that audience respond? It's just someone that I have this really kind of intimate dialogue with. And so I think that was, because I think in many ways for us, I don't know about how you two feel, but for me, I feel like I'm just in these kind of makeshift private theater, you know? So that's what the camera does for me.
Oh, right, like the camera being theater.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like our intimate audience, you know?
Accomplice.
Yes, whether they want to or not. I mean, that thing has to be there. So you know there's always going to be somebody showing up, which is your camera.
Wow, I mean, it's such a generative question, right? So how photography shapes our practices, even though we all work with theater and painting and performance and sculptural elements, the stage set. I think, first, I guess maybe three things. The geometrical interpolation that's happening, the spatial flattening, which is both like historically violent, right? These systems of ethnographic classification that happen, and still today with like AI, this automatic registering of facial features, right? That are direct in correlation from early mugshots, for example. But within that, I love lingering in that space and playing with what happens when we collapse three-dimensional volume to flatness. And so my work often flickers between this three-dimensional body and two-dimensional body. Like in this work, I first had my body wrapped in tape by the artist Laura Larson, who's here today. And then I printed the photograph of my tape body, reinserted it back into the set, the constructed paper room, and then we took the final photograph. So yeah, I also think of the flattening as a space to push against, or to cut into, or to punch holes in, or to simply wanting to bend the grid, make it my own, to create her own contexts.
And I think in our case, I mean, I feel like it's appropriate to say that, you know, we use photography in a way to, you know, to make the photo. You know, we make the photograph. We create all of these things so we can make this two-dimensional
Situation
work, and
happening.
it's not.
Yes.
You know, I don't think we use it in the way that we go. You know, we don't. I don't think we take photograph really, but we make them.
And another point to underline is the handmade. Everything is handmade. In yours too, no? That you make your shoes and yes, and that is something that I really think that relates to the ground that we're standing, no? Everything is constructed from scratch. Look at
Right.
the walls here, everything is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I also think of the camera and the photograph and the body as interchangeable. Like the body is a photograph, the body is a camera, the body is a portal. These works, these are quite recent, more recent, and I've been starting to work with glass technicians. So I've been making my own sculpture molds, and then I work with glass technicians to blow large glass bubbles into a mold of my face. So thinking of the face as a camera or a lens that distorts and also records and also connects between generations.
That really leads me to my next question. How have your perspectives and practices evolved over time? Is camouflage a through line that remains relevant for you for other series across your careers?
Well, in my case, in strictly talking about my photographs, when I started doing the Camouflage series, the landscape series, I related on painting my body with what it was as a ground, you know? The textile that was printed, I was wearing sort of a dress about that, and I was painted as the background. I think that it was a way at the beginning to be sure, like when we hold ourselves to something, be sure that I am being inserted in that landscape. But as time went by, the background started to be completely black. And I was the landscape myself. So it's like I'm standing in my own ground now. I don't need the background to help me anymore. So she's singing solo, you might say, you know.
It's like you don't need another environment to blend yourself.
I am the environment now.
Great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that's more or less, in my case, the evolution. Yeah. Eventually, after this series, I started another series that it's called The Abandoned, where I insert myself in abandoned places that have been closed for many, many years, and well, through permissions and handling of a person who does this for me, we enter these places that have been locked for many years, hospitals or places where they used to weave, and I make a scene there, a photographs there, as bringing life back to that place. Yeah.
So the site specificity is there. I mean, you're going to the place and working with the materials
that
to
is there.
Pay homage
Exactly.
to.
Exactly.
Yeah, and in terms of like what I do, you know, it's like it's been my work has been really been influenced by my teaching, really. So I have been, you know, doing many different projects that on the surface seems to be kind of different from each other. However, it's the same notion as they're still home. It's all about authenticity in terms of cultural and racial. So, you know, even like some recent work where I photograph Vietnam, but through only like a sight of my hotel window. And that's just the perspective of like how I want to blend in and stay behind somewhere safe in my country. So that perspective is only you get from a tourist. So just acknowledging my kind of disassociation with that culture and embracing it. So it's still the same, but it's really heavily determined by where I'm going to be at that time, you know? So I guess in a way it's we moving through the same kind of.
Yes.
Would you say
Journey.
that now instead of creating your studio landscapes, you're using found ones instead?
Yes, and you know, and I think I'm just embracing. It's really interesting. You know, after many years of having the camera like toward you, it's just really strange to have that camera facing out into the world. But it's like it's almost, you have this camera lens out there, but then there's this mirror that's coming back.
Projecting.
Yes, and it just shows you how, you know, how other you are, even, you know, after all of these years in your own culture or like about being over here. It's just a really interesting kind of relationship that I have with that camera now. And I just want to add too, for me, and I think I'm just like one of those really obsessive people that always want to make more and more and more and more. And so I feel like all of these projects that we start, I don't think it ends. We just need to take a break, do something else, and then come back to it, you know, at some other point. I feel like, you know, all of my projects are really unfinished, even if they take 12 years or whatever. I don't think they're finished. There's always something that you can do a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, that, again, it's such a productive question to think about, looking back, you know, for so many decades. And I think of maybe like 4 trajectories that I find helpful to reflect upon. In terms of camouflage has evolved also more into masking, which is a type of obscuring. And through that masking, it's transformed from, instead of just refusing the camera's gaze, it's been, I see it as shapes of potential. And it might even be the exact same form, but just conceptually I'm approaching it to you know, sites of, like the body as a site of potential and what we all actually have in common. Because it's really easy to address difference, but it's actually, for me, more risk-taking to address sameness and what we have in common, and we have to fight for that. It's also evolved in terms of being, it started with the tropical body and this direct representation of a faux tropical set, but then it quickly evolved into more minimalist abstraction. And I think within these direct addresses of the camouflage or masked body, I hope that myself, but also the viewer, may be open to the unknown, like the unknown within the person we're encountering, and the unknown within yourself or ourselves, because there's so much assumption and projections of who we are, especially with AI and this image culture that we live in today. But if we can hang on to this openness to the unknown, then I think that is the most direct survival strategy that we need to adopt. Yeah.
I think we could keep going. I feel like these are such rich responses, but I'd love to open it up now to the audience if anyone has questions.
No pressure.
Oh, yeah. We're just looking at you. It's great.
We're the last talk. We're closing down the house.
Wow, look like no one. Sounds like.
There's
You're working with, oh, sorry, hi. Even though you're all working with disguise or masking, that there's a way that you as subjects, that your gaze is activated in some ways, and not just like whether it's looking back or looking away, but it's actually, and maybe this ties in a little bit with what Gina was saying before, like there's something like more prismatic about it, like just like a sense of scanning maybe. And I don't know if this resonates with you, but that was just a thread that I felt connected all of the work.
I mean, I just feel like, you know, it's you know, I mean, it's not pretty, but I think like the work has agency, you know. I think like I feel like that's like a thread of just not purely decorative, but there's something that is actually actively being a part of this larger dialogue, I think.
I love that prismatic gaze. Whoa.
I was just wondering if you could say a little bit about influences on your work, and that can range from photographic influences to philosophical to music to wherever you want to go with that.
Wow, it's so great to hear that. It's amazing.
Well, I can say that I consider my mothers, Louise Bourgeois, Kiki Smith, William Kentridge, Ansep Kiefer. I'm missing probably somebody, but those are my father and mothers. Yes. Also, I consider incredibly a source of force when I see the young artists that have no fear. My goodness, I have so many doubts in my work constantly, and I see them, like crashing over the canvas, and I go like, I am learning here, It's so wonderful when you see that going on. So it is with the ones that have no fear and the ones that are as analytic as Kiefer that I get my influence from. Yeah.
Well, and for me, I guess, I think an attitude, at least at the time that I was speaking, especially making that types of work, especially where I was at in my life, and then my appearance in terms of like my racial features, I embraced the Sex Pistols, loudly, because they just want to make a lot of noise, and I just felt that was so incredible, especially when you were younger. And in terms of really, really inspiring for me is, two people, Sang Quan Chi and Tay Xian Xie, two performer. For me, my work is an emulation of Sang Quan Chi in different mode. And, I as an athlete, stamina, performance is very important to me. And I look at Qian Chi, where his one-year performances were just so influential in terms of like how I produce in my studio.
Wow, I mean, gosh, I think of the histories of like performance art and minimalism, how a lot of time there's this era where they were emerging, happening together, but maybe historically they're not put together. I think of being in San Francisco in the mid to late 90s and being surrounded by just fearless performance artists. And then my first job as an art installer was at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, and I installed Patty Chang's show. And I was just like, oh my gosh, she's wearing a bra in the photos, and then there's melons inside, and then she proceeds in a video to cut off her breasts and eat them. But they're the melons, she's like eating melons. And I was like, wow, that's how you create meaning. That's how you deconstruct the stereotype. That's how you connect material with conceptual underpinnings. So, yeah, a big influence.
Tremendous force.
Yeah.
I'm Ninette. I'm a student at ICP. I'm graduating in 3 weeks. And I'm Ninette. I am a student of ICP, and I graduate in 3 weeks. And when I started a year ago, everything that you think a project starts to move, starts to change, everything changes. One of the last ideas that I started doing was to do the project of identity, which is very in tune with everything you do. And 3 weeks ago, my mother passed away, who is part of my project, and trying to put all the emotions into a photography, into using the medium as part of an expression is cathartic. It's emotional. How does one keep going when even your same project, which is finishing in 2 weeks, is that? And I have to keep moving on through those spaces.
I think one, I'm very sorry for your loss. It's such a tremendous loss. It's hard to remember, and it's hard to have faith, belief in this, but one maybe kind of anecdote, when I teach at Ohio State University, and several years ago, Carrie Mae Weems visited the photo area, and for some reason, the photo professors were also in the room, and Carrie Mae Weems said, well, I'm not gonna do individual graduate visits, but graduate students, you must show all your work in one room. And so we were all in this room together, we're like, oh my gosh, what is she saying, And we're listening, and one thing she said was, every night, I have a portfolio, and I look through all of my work before she goes to sleep. I was like, it's this, faith, that our work will lead us, and that you have this powerful voice that exists outside of verbal language, and that your work will lead you.
Well, I think in terms of loss, I escaped death by 5 minutes really with my, 8 of my family members perished that one night. So my question has always been, why am I like the person, right? And I think you're so close to it, and I think it's hard. But for me, one way for me to resolve it was just, just say, I'm here, I'm doing this thing because these people have given me my voice. And in some ways, it takes that responsibility away from me a little bit. And as a gesture to honor these voices, your family passing or whoever, I have loads of those people, growing up in Vietnam, and I just always thinking about that, it's like, what, why do you do what you do? And it's really, not to exert what, your accomplishment is great, but there are people who have given you that privilege, here or not here, and it's so important to embrace it. I sincerely believe in that.
Well, I'm going to quote somebody that is in this room. When I was in your place, I learned through him that you have no escapatory from art. Art is your life because it is not that you chose to go to iPad and study, but art chose you. So you are now a person who is an artist, young artist, but that's your path. So it's through art that you're going to find your solace, your cure, your peace. And you have to work every day. Yeah. No matter what, a line, but every day. That's the key to become a real artist, to work every day. Maybe you go
rain or shine, challenge or
maybe
not.
You go and
you got to clock in, clock out.
Yes,
Just like a job.
clock in, clock out.
But you went and you did something, and then you come back. Or it will torture you if you don't do it. Believe me.
Clock in, clock out. Yes.
Thank you so much. Or do we
Oh,
have
yeah,
time for
we have one more.
or- Okay, one more.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk so far. It's been really illuminating. One question I'm currently working out in my practice, I'm a student as well, is the tension between performance being very time-based, like inherently time-based, as someone who is a movement artist, but then also a photographer, where photography is, fixed, it's static. And, I think, there are many ways to think about that, like what if photography were more time-based, or thinking of it in that way, and what happens when we try and fix something that is inherently ephemeral in the image. So yeah, I would just like to hear your thoughts on that.
I cannot understand fully what you are asking. I don't know if you...
Just general thoughts on like performance being time-based and the photograph being fixed.
Yes.
Do you know, time-based for me, I'm such a bad actor that I think time-based would be kind of scary, and I think that's why I choose that singular moment, where I can actually selectively choose my gesture and like the decisive moment. Otherwise, for me, it would be just a string of indecisive moments, and it just doesn't make any sense. So I think there's something so beautiful about wondering what happened and then what will happen when you park at that singular moment. You know what I mean? I think there's something so powerful that you don't know what's going to come next.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's for me. The performance for me is for the still. I'm embracing that. I think that was just like a choice. I think it makes sense. Do you know what? I've done performances. Time performance. Yeah. 3-4 hours doing whatever, and I think it's just it's just so different. Where. Like when you have this single frame where you can actually sit down, it's not so crazy and it's not like right there. Yeah. And you know what? And you can control the rate in which it can be successful or not. Whereas I feel like a performance, it really depending on the audience so much, it depending on the space, depending on how you feel that day. There's a certain kind of unpredictability about a live performance for me, so.
Yeah. Well, it's time for us to clock out now, but thank you so much for these inspiring words.
Thank you, Paulina.
Thank you, Paulina.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you so much.